I know I have not made a video in a couple weeks. I Yeah, after that the Washington preview, I just felt like, hey, I already mentioned in my previous videos that I think USC was just going to lose every game the rest of the way, and there really wasn't much of a reason for me to get on camera and say anything because if you go back into my previous videos, I just thought USC was going to lose every game. And now, fortunately, since my last video, uh, Lincoln Riley decided to go with Jaden Maiava as the quarterback. And I know I didn't make any videos at that time. I still stuck with my statement that I just felt like USC was going to lose every game the rest of the way. There were just so many disappointing moments. And again, I made that prediction, but luckily and unfortunately, USC was able to get wins over Nebraska and UCLA, and then now here against Texas A&M. And for this game against Texas A&M, I thought USC was going to lose it, and for a while it looked like USC was, but fortunately they found a way to come back and win. And I was very impressed with Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon, the way these two guys led the receiving game. And without, there isn't any Zach Branch or Deuce Robinson or Kyron Hudson. And so we really needed the two of them to step up, and they did. And I think going into next season, that's a very, very promising, very promising sign. Now, of course, I think what this team needs is some more depth and supporting cast members to help them out. And if we get some more of those guys, and whether through the transfer portal or just some of the freshmen coming in, that's great. And then also with the running game, I was impressed with Brian Jackson and Amarian Peterson. For most of the season, we have seen Woody Marks and Quentin Joyner, and they've been great. Woody Marks is going to be going to the NFL, and unfortunately Quentin Joyner hit the transfer portal. So this was kind of an unknown running game that we were going to be seeing coming into this game against Texas A&M. And from what I could tell, they've proven themselves to be, I'd say, a good tandem going into next year. We'll see if SC gets another running back in the portal, but between those two guys, and I think there's two others coming in this freshman class, there should be, I guess, enough depth there. With the offensive line, that was another question mark because Mason Murphy was a starter and he hit the portal. Jonah Monheim, he opted out for the NFL draft, and then unfortunately Elijah Page went down early in the game. So with all these different factors at play, on offensive line, running game, receiving game, USC could have very well struggled in this game against Texas A&M, and that looked like it was going to be the case early on. Well, early on when they had a couple 3-and-outs, and then for Texas A&M, they got the ball, and in that first quarter, they just moved the ball down the field and scored. And USC, of course, fortunately made some good defensive stops, some interceptions to kind of slow down Texas A&M's momentum. And so that was, Texas A&M. I think they have a bright future with Marcel Reed as their quarterback. I would say, at least in terms of mobility, from what we saw from him, he was definitely the hardest quarterback that USC had faced. I mean, and hey, he's pretty good passer too. So we definitely put him as one of the better quarterbacks that I think, at least, that USC had faced. And again, with the defense, I didn't really talk much about some of the transfers or injuries or things like that there, but I would say that the damage that USC had faced, at least in terms of guys hitting the portal or opting out, there was I would say, a smaller impact on that side of the ball. It was nice to see, I believe Eric Gentry was back in the game. Kamari Ramsey was playing, then he'll be back. And then also, I think, was it Akili Arnold was playing. I think Easton Mascarenas Arnold was playing. And so there were a couple other key pieces that we needed for the defense in this game to at least, keep it competitive and then eventually win. They were all there, so that's good. And I thought D'Anton Lynn did a great job making adjustments after that first quarter. After that, again, I was really concerned about the outcome of this game from that first quarter. But then also, even though USC had stayed in it for the second or going into the third quarter, it looked like starting the fourth quarter that Texas A&M was going to run away with it. It was 24-7, and then just like that, USC puts up 2 touchdowns, and now it's only a 3-point game. And eventually USC gets a lead, loses it, and then gets it, and then gets the lead right back when you need it most with just a couple seconds left. So I was very, very impressed with the way this team has fought back. And even though this season hasn't gone as well as we had liked, this team they've always found a way to hang in the games. And we've saw it from again, Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Maryland. Who else was there? Washington, and then even Notre Dame. They've always been in it. They had fallen short, but they've proven they can play competitive with everybody. And luckily in this game with Texas A&M, they didn't give up, and they managed to get that win. And Kyle Ford, I didn't mention him earlier. This bowl game was a great opportunity for him, even though Zach Branch, Deuce Robinson, Kyron Hudson, those guys weren't there, but Kyle Ford had this opportunity to make some big plays and end his career at USC on a high note. And hopefully, if he's able to get drafted by a team in the NFL, good for him. So this game, it didn't have a whole lot of, I guess there wasn't a ton of significance in the terms of the rest of the college football world. It was just, a bowl game between a 6-6 USC team and an 8-4 Texas A&M team. And this game, to me, even though there wasn't, if you win this game or lose this game, it may not always mean anything to lots of other people. But for USC to get this win, what it does is it builds a little bit of positive momentum going into the offseason. And I think that's important because if you just kind of let this sort of negativity from the regular season carry over past the bowl game, it's just not going to feel uplifting for anybody, players or coaches. I think so. So to get that win, end on a high note, is nice, and at least this game made for one of the more entertaining of bowl games for just the casual viewer. So at least they got to enjoy something. But what I've come to realize with a lot of these bowl games is that even though they may not have meaning beyond just getting a win after a regular 6-6 or 8-4 season, it's these are still these games are still opportunities for the other players on the team, that if other guys are transferring or opting out, you get other players who are either making a debut, but they're getting a chance to establish themselves and make a name for themselves heading into the off season, and hopefully in the next season they can be either a starter or a significant contributor. So that's the way I look at it. And also again with these bowl games, it's almost like, okay, yeah, guys are opting out of transferring, but again, you get to see that preview for next season. And so for USC, we were able to see that with in the running game with Amarian Peterson and Brian Jackson, but then also seeing Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon really establish themselves as that 1-2 punch. So that was great to see. Now, when it comes to when it comes to Jaden Maiava at quarterback, I like Jaden Maiava as the quarterback at USC. I want him to succeed. I want to see him, be the quarterback next year, assuming he makes, he has those necessary improvements. And again, I didn't make a video at the time when Jaden Maiava was named the starting quarterback, but I agree with that decision. Miller Moss, I think he was more of an accurate passer than Jaden Maiava, but Miller Moss lacked the mobility that was needed to run a Lincoln Riley offense and just an offense in general, as this game has changed a lot, and you can't rely on on a quarterback that can't move around in the pocket. And Jaden Maiava is able to do that, and he was able to do that in this game and make some plays. Now, he made a lot of mistakes in this game too. He threw 3 interceptions, and there were just some bad throws and other bad decisions. So even though he has been the starting quarterback, we've seen some good things from him, there's still a lot that needs to improve in his game. And I think that there still should, there has to be, again, an open competition at the quarterback position, whether it's between, him and Husan Longstreet, the new freshman quarterback coming in, or if there's a transfer quarterback coming in. This is just the only thing that I can conclude that has to be done, because there are very high expectations at this quarterback position at USC. We've seen greatness from lots of quarterbacks, and like I said, I want Jaden Maiava to be that guy. It's been great seeing him lead this team to wins against Nebraska or UCLA, or in this case Texas A&M, and make plays when it matters. And I think he's one of those guys that he might make a lot of mistakes, but at times when you need him to do something very important for this team, he'll do it. So I'm really happy for him, and I guess we'll just have to see what happens in the off season. And I don't know I forgot if I mentioned earlier in the video but on the defensive side, I was very impressed with D'Anton Lynn for making the necessary adjustments after that first quarter. So looking at just the kind of recapping this season and looking ahead to next season, I think that the defense is on the right track. We've seen improvements. Things haven't been perfect. I think there are questions with depth on the defensive line, and linebacker too. I think recruiting in some of these areas need to get better, and we'll talk about that. But I think with D'Anton Lynn running the defense, they're definitely getting better. Offensively, we saw this team take a step back, and when I made videos at the beginning of the season, preseason, I thought that this defense would take some steps forward. I don't know by how much, but they would take some steps forward. But I felt that the offense would take a few steps back after just when you lose a guy like Caleb Williams. And fair to say that this team, they did take some steps back offensively. And in a perfect world, if USC had this current defense, and I'm not even saying it's elite or the best that USC's ever had, it's not, but just relative to what we had seen before, this defense has improved. And if USC just had this defense with either the 2022 or 2023 team, this team would be in the playoffs and playing for a national championship, at least in the 2022 season. That's what I believe. So we have seen those improvements, but unfortunately, this is just one of those years that in terms of quarterback play, a Lincoln Riley team and a Lincoln, the quarterback situation, things just weren't there. And this team, kind of suffered as a result. We've, like I said, we've made their times, they made plays and they've done things. We saw a great game against LSU, and then we saw, kind of a good way to kind of close things out against Texas A&M. But there wasn't that high level and that consistency that we would want. So Lincoln Riley is going to have to figure that out in the off season to decide if, is he going to stick with Jaden Maiava or is Hassan Longstreet, who's coming in, is he going to be the guy? So got to let that competition play out. This team needs it, but I do hope the best for Jaden Maiava. So, and when I look at just this team, and again with the recap of everything, they've proven that they can play with just about anybody, and they played up to their competition. They played down to their competition, unfortunately, as well. And we saw them play it down to the wire against Penn State, who's still in the playoffs. They held, at least they were in it with Notre Dame until at least the midway through the fourth quarter. They made some, SC made some costly mistakes that just put the game out of reach. But for the most part, they were playing competitive. And then we saw with Michigan, same thing, playing competitive. Turns out that same Michigan team beat Ohio State. So I guess that loss to Michigan wasn't so bad. But again, USC, they were right there in contention for everything. It's just a shame that it just didn't work out. But to end the season on a high note with a win against Texas A&M, we'll take that. And in a season like this, to go 7-6, yeah, not something to brag about, but at least when two of those wins come against SEC teams, that makes it a little bit better. It makes it better than I guess other 7-6 team seasons, or 8-5 or whatever, 7-6 kind of seasons where there were a lot of losses. This 7-6 season feels a little bit better when knowing they beat an LSU and a Texas A&M, and they still beat UCLA. So there were some things that were good from it, but just knowing that they had chances to win all these other games and didn't, that's just where it kind of hurts. So when I think about the going into next season and just the state of this team, there's a lot that has to be cleaned up. And I like the win from yesterday and the momentum that you can kind of use to go into the off season. But this team, they're going to have to do a much better job with figuring out NIL, and then also recruiting Southern California better. And with NIL, it seems a lot of players that would have otherwise have gone to USC are going to places like Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, and SC just has to figure something out. The game is changing, and I'm all for players making money, and they work hard and they're making a lot of money for NCAA football and college athletics, and that's great that they're making money, because if you get injured in college football and you don't get a chance to play in the pros, and you have no money and nothing to show for, that's too bad. That's not good. And so I like that players can make that money, but I just want to make sure that USC is in a position to benefit in the process and get the guys that can help win games and have that talent and depth. And if they're losing out on these guys, they gotta, like I said before, they gotta figure it out. And I'm just right now, I'm not really sure if USC has figured that out. And whoever's responsible for this, I don't know. But right now, it just seems like USC is playing a lot of catch up, and a team like Oregon is really leading the way, and it's Nike money, throwing the bags of money at these players that otherwise might have gone to USC. Oregon Oregon is capitalizing on things at USC's expense. And as a USC fan, I hate to say that, but that's what's happening, and I want that to change. So, but when talking about recruiting, again, that's part of NIL, but there's a lot of guys in Southern California that I think should be going to USC, but they end up going elsewhere. And there could be, if it's NIL or development or what, that has to be figured out. And I know Lincoln Riley, there's been a lot to criticize about him in these last 2 years. I mean, maybe that first year, you could give him a pass because at least they got their 11 wins, and maybe the defense wasn't the reason for most of those wins. But going into the year 2 and year 3, that's where things have to improve. And I think in this third year, the defense is there, but I feel like going into year 4 now, it's like USC is almost having to start over. I think on offensively, figuring out their quarterback situation, figuring out. They just promoted, I think, the tight ends coach to offensive line coach. But there's just like a lot of these moments where USC is still trying to get off the ground and build upon their success. And right now, we've seen this team go from 11-3 to 8-5, now to 7-6. So we have to see this team turn things around. And when I look at the schedule for next season, it looks very manageable. They have 2 very easy non-conference games to start with: Missouri State and Georgia Southern. Clay Helton coaches there, by the way. Now, that game against Missouri State, that was supposed to be against Ole Miss, but I guess both USC and Ole Miss mutually agreed upon not playing for, I guess, a multitude of reasons. So that Ole Miss game is no longer there, and USC just had to fill something in, so they got Missouri State. And so those should be 2 easy wins right there. But then when you look at some of the other games, they got they're playing at Purdue. They got some home games with Michigan and Michigan State. I think both those games are winnable. They play on the road at Nebraska. Again, that could be tough, but I think they could still win that. They also have some tough games on the road at Oregon and Notre Dame. I don't know if those games are going to be wins, but I think probably more so losses. So at least 2 losses right there. I'm trying to see who else was on the schedule, or if there's a couple other teams I'm forgetting. I think at Illinois. Again, Illinois is improved, but I think a properly talented USC team should win that game. So I think if Lincoln Riley wants to prove that he is at least the right coach for this team, or proven he can get a 5th year, he's going to have to, I'd say, go 9-3 to really to at least get us as fans to feel confident in him. Because the way that they were playing in a lot of these games, there's just something, they're losing a lot of games, and it has to turn around. And I know that they can't replace Lincoln Riley so quickly right now, because if you were to buy out his contract, that's like $70 or $80 million. It's something crazy. And you got to go. I think they got to. I'm sure there's a lot of people right now that would like to see Lincoln Riley go, and I'm not sure if he really is going to be the coach for USC that takes them to the playoffs or the conference championships or get to a national championship. I personally don't think he's going to be that coach. I'm happy for the win that we saw to end the season, but just being realistic from what we've seen, I can't just come here and say, oh, well, things are going to magically turn around next year, and then by 2026 things will be even better. Because if you look at that 2026 Big Ten schedule, that is a tough one. That's going to be really, really tough. And if Lincoln Riley wants to survive that, or survive a season like that, he's going to have to make a big statement for 2025. And right now, it's up to him to prove things to us, because we saw what we saw in this season, and I think there are things, at least on the offensive side of the ball, that he should be able to fix, and he must, because that's been his specialty, is offense. Defensively, he has the right coaching staff in place with D'Anton Lynn there, and got to hope that SC can hold him, keep him around for at least another 1 or 2 years, because he's a good one, and I think at some point he's going to be a head coach somewhere. USC lost Matt Entz, who was the coach at North Dakota State, coached the linebackers. Now he's the head coach at Fresno State. Would have been nice to have him still around. And if Lincoln Riley wasn't going to be the head coach at USC, the question could have been, could Matt Entz have been the right coach, given his own success at winning championships at North Dakota State in the FCS. So there's a lot for this USC team to prove. There's, like I said, it's an uphill battle that USC is facing. They just have to they got to figure out this NIL and start recruiting Southern California harder. I mean, there's a lot of talent, in the area, and from Mater Dei or Bosco or some of these places locally, and all these top players are all going somewhere else, not USC. And 10 years ago, or 15 or 20 years ago, that would have never been the case. A lot of these top guys, they would have all gone to SC. They're all here. But I can understand, how SC may have lost its appeal in some respects, but that just has to change. And I don't know. I honestly don't. I can't say that if Lincoln Riley is really going to be the one to turn things around. But as if you're a USC fan, you have to hope for the best. Can't defend every single thing about Lincoln Riley, but we've seen, at least he got SC a Heisman Trophy with Caleb Williams. That's good. But this isn't Oklahoma. This isn't Big 12 football, and you're playing against teams that have good defenses, and so I know that's good that SC's starting to develop that defense. But being in the Big Ten and in this conference in this situation, Lincoln Riley's going to have to do a lot more than just rely on an all-world quarterback. Going up against, at that time, Big 12 teams that barely had any defenses. And, he was able to get his conference championships and playoff appearances and lots of wins there. But, so far coming over to USC, it hasn't translated to that same success. And I don't think it quite will. But like I said, he's here. And that he has a big contract, and so you just have to hope he can turn things around. And we've seen before with other coaches like Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian. I don't want this to be another situation where like Lane Kiffin, where he just he hits a low point in his career, burns a bunch of bridges and all that kind of stuff, and then he has to go to a place like Alabama and get rehabilitated by Nick Saban. And then he starts doing better, and then reflects on USC being the low point in his career. And then also same thing with Steve Sarkisian. He had his alcohol issues from Washington, still had him at USC, and then he hits his low point. Nick Saban rehabilitates him, and then Steve Sarkisian, now he's doing a lot better with Texas. But then USC has just been that place where he has this was his place to. Where he hits his low point, and now USC, USC becomes that place where he has to reflect on his past about how there he is at his low point, and then goes on to do something better. And I don't want this to be the case for Lincoln Riley, where he's at his low point in his career at USC, maybe at some point gets fired, gets picked up as a coach somewhere else, and then starts doing better elsewhere. But then USC just happens to have all these coaches again, at the lowest point in their career, or at the lowest point in their lives. And so I hopefully Lincoln Riley can get that sorted out. But I want to be realistic about everything. I don't want to come across as a homer. So if you've made it this far into the video, and I've spoken almost 30 minutes here, I've just had a lot to say, and this video will probably be the last one I make until till we get closer to the 2025 season. So with Lincoln Riley, I'm just not so sure about what's going to happen. But we just have to hope for the best. And looking at, some people might say, especially on the Oklahoma side, that say, well, we warned you about Lincoln Riley. Well, I don't know if they really quote warned, warned because, for one thing, as fans, you can warn us, but we aren't the ones making the decisions about who's our head coach. We don't get a vote or say it. It's an athletic director that gets to decide that. So, the warning us, what are we supposed to do? Second, when Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, and I know some people might say after the fact, well, he did worse every season. We didn't really want him anyway. Maybe you could probably look at the analytics and point to that, but that wasn't the case when he immediately left Oklahoma, because when he left Oklahoma, a lot of people were upset that he left, because if he was really that bad of a coach, nobody should be upset about anything. And I know he's not a perfect coach, but for what he was doing at Oklahoma, he was still winning lots of games. And I just don't believe that, people could say they were really happy that he left. I know that he left not on the best of terms there and just had to leave. But I mentioned in one of my other videos that the way that college football is structured and the way that how the season ends, the regular season ends, and you have early signing period, it incentivizes coaches if they're not, in the playoffs, for example, if the regular season ends and there's a head coach opening job or head coach opening, and they accept the job, they got to act quick, because you're gonna have that early signing day coming up, and you got to get those guys, get the people you need, and hold on to the people that are already committed. And so that system kind of incentivizes a Lincoln Riley to leave early rather than wait till the end of a regular season, and that's a whole separate conversation. But talking about Lincoln Riley and everything, I understand that people can be upset about it, but I just don't think that, I don't believe that at the time before he left that people wanted him gone, from Oklahoma. I think it's fair to say though that he's not a perfect coach, and that in the Big 12 that quarterback play, good quarterback play can take you far, and you don't need as good of a defense to do it. And coming to USC, a lot of those issues and things were exposed. If you're playing against better teams that have either maybe better defenses but also better offenses, and if you slip up the quarterback play or offensively, you're going to fall behind. So anyway, USC, they with Lincoln Riley, it's still very questionable, and for again on the Oklahoma side of things, I think there's reasons to point. You can definitely point out the flaws or negatives in the coaching, but I don't think at the time when he did leave that anybody was at Oklahoma was asking him to leave at that moment. Because if he, like I said, if he did leave, everybody should have just been cheering for immediately, and there should have been no people upset. And if, just like right now, I mean, even if Lincoln Riley were to just walk away from the USC job right now, I don't think anybody would be upset. Like I said, we hope it works out, but I think if new coaching staff were to be announced, or Lincoln Riley accepted a job elsewhere, well, we as fans would probably be okay with it. Now, so anyway, I know that was a little bit of a tangent there, but with I guess talking about Oklahoma, I know going into the SEC and Brett Venables, I know there's some challenges there that they're dealing with, and I don't know what the buyout situation is going to be like for their coach, but I think both, at the end of the day, I think USC and Oklahoma are kind of still in similar positions. If Lincoln Riley stayed at Oklahoma, would the same, would he be kind of in the same kind of position as Brett Venables? Perhaps. But I think all that really happened was USC gets Lincoln Riley, and then Oklahoma with Venables, and both teams kind of have somewhat similar records. So we're kind of all in the same position. But anyway, hopefully both teams figure things out for next season, and get on that winning track, or more of a winning track, and see how it goes. So I know this video has been a very long one. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. And anybody who's watched my videos, whether you're a USC fan or not, a subscriber or not, thank you for taking the time to listen to this very long speech or lecture that I just gave here. And we will see you maybe, well, I don't know if I'll be making videos for next season. We'll find out. But anyway, it's been fun, and hope for the best going into 2025. So until then, fight on and have a happy new year, everybody.